With football season upon us now, there's a lot happening in the news, so be sure to subscribe to my other channel, JG9 News, where I give you up-to-the-minute updates on everything happening in the NFL in a completely relaxed, unscripted format, and I give my thoughts on everything taking place around the National Football League today. And now, on with our feature presentation. Getting into the Pro Bowl is one of the highest honors that a player in the NFL can receive. It always says a lot when you're able to play in the National Football League. That, by itself, is a pretty big honor. It means that of all the football players in the world, you are one of the best, and you get to play the sport for a living. But to make it to the Pro Bowl, that means that of the best, you are the best of the best. You're in the top 1% of the top 0.0001%. You had an incredible season. The fans love you. The players and coaches respect you, and you deserve to be showcased and be recognized. Making a Pro Bowl is absolutely massive, even if the game itself is meaningless. It helps your Hall of Fame chances. It gets you a nice little bonus. It makes you more popular. And it's just a nice way to be recognized for all of your accomplishments. And yes, today, the Pro Bowl is a shell of what it used to be, and is almost completely unrecognizable. With Pro Bowl weekend basically being what you'd see at your local elementary school field day. But back in the day, yeah, this meant a ton. It was an honor that everyone strived to achieve. Making the Pro Bowl was a huge milestone. And speaking of milestones, we're trying to reach 70,000 subscribers and hit that milestone on the channel. So if you want to help us get to 70K and you like learning more about the history of the NFL, then be sure to hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel, because we post every single day about the weird and the wacky history of this great sport. Thanks in advance for your support. Well, I bring that up because the man you've been watching this whole time is San Diego Chargers running back Marion Butts. And even though making the Pro Bowl is a huge honor, he didn't really care for it and didn't really want to play in the game. Now, by itself, that might not be weird. Maybe he wanted to rest and recover after a long and grueling season. Maybe he was dealing with some personal matters. Maybe he wanted to spend time with his family. You can probably think of a bunch of different reasons why a player wouldn't necessarily be too excited to play in the Pro Bowl. However, Marion Butts had what had to be, without any shadow of a doubt whatsoever, the dumbest reason for not wanting to play in the Pro Bowl. If you can think of the dumbest reasons to not want to play in the game and make the trip, I promise you, this is up there with some of the worst of the worst. Because this is the story behind Marion Butts, and the man who might have been, considering the circumstances, one of the dumbest Chargers in the history of the franchise. Before I talk about the actual incident in question, and just how insane it was, we need some context to understand just how good this man that you've been watching this whole time, Marion Butts, was, and why he was likely going to be heading to Hawaii in the first place to play in the Pro Bowl. The year is 1990, and the San Diego Chargers, under the guidance of head coach Dan Henning, are not a good team. This was a team that hadn't made the playoffs since 1982, and had come off of back-to-back 6-10 seasons. No one was expecting much of anything from San Diego to start off the new decade. They had the 8th worst odds of any team to win the Super Bowl, and most people expected somewhere in the ballpark of a 6-10 campaign in Henning's second year as the head coach in a fairly stacked AFC West on paper. And sure enough, the Chargers, for the third straight season, finished 6-10. They started off 1-4, and though they tried to claw their way back into the playoff mix, and to their credit, even got back to 500 at one point, they couldn't quite get over that hump, as they started on a whimper, and they ended on a whimper with 3 straight losses. It was another below-average season in San Diego, which had become all too commonplace lately. Having said that, the Chargers did have some talent, and had a couple of guys who would either make the Pro Bowl or would put up a case to play in the All-Star game. One of them was linebacker Leslie O'Neal, who would finish the season 5th in the league in sacks with 13.5. One of them was wide receiver Anthony Miller, a Pro Bowler the year before in 1989, who would make it again after a 1990 campaign with 63 catches for 933 yards and 7 touchdowns. And the other one Well, that's the man you've been watching this whole time, running back Marion Butts, who genuinely might have been the best runner in football by this point, not named Thurman Thomas or Barry Sanders. Butts was a 7th-round pick the year before at the 1989 NFL Draft out of Florida State. And as a rookie, though he wouldn't start a ton of games or get a ton of touches compared to his peers, he would become a touchdown vulture, scoring 9 rushing touchdowns and ranking 7th in the NFL in that category. And in 1990, he was picking up right where he left off, although this time, it was in an expanded role. The touches in 1989 that were taken away from him and were going to Tim Spencer and Darren Nelson, who you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner, those touches were now exclusively going to Marion Butts. And man, did he take advantage of them. Because in 1990, Marion Butts was, in a word, dominant. Simply put, he was dominant. He ended the season with 1,225 rushing yards, which was the 3rd most in the league, only behind Barry Sanders and Thurman Thomas. And he found the end zone 8 times, ranking inside the top 10 in rushing touchdowns, despite being on an offense that was in the bottom half of football. Only 3 players in 1990 had over 1,200 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns, with those 3 guys being future Hall of Fame runner Barry Sanders, future Hall of Fame runner Thurman Thomas, and Marion Butts. If you're in exclusive company with 2 of the undisputed greatest running backs of all time, you definitely did something right, and you were definitely one heck of a player. Butts finished inside the top 10 in the NFL in yards from scrimmage. He led the league in rushing yards per game, since he only played in 14 games, and he was named an AP second-team All-Pro, getting recognition from sports writers as one of the best running backs in the sport. And let's make it extremely clear, without the man you've been watching this whole time, the Chargers are nowhere close to as good as they were in 1990. After a 1-4 start, Butts put the team on his back as they attempted to claw their way back into the playoff hunt. Just to name a few games that Butts dominated in, while the Chargers had their backs against the wall, he scored 2 touchdowns and 159 rushing yards in a 38-17 win over the Jets. He had 121 yards and 2 touchdowns in a 39-3 win over the Jets. Yes, the Jets played the Chargers twice that year. And he had 3 rushing touchdowns in a 41-10 win over the Buccaneers. The Chargers not only found themselves an absolute gem in the 7th round, but it seemed as though they found one of the best and one of the most productive runners in football in the process. And because of this, even though the Chargers were a bad team that didn't get a lot of national love, seeing as they had 0 games on Monday Night Football and just 1 Sunday Night Football game, Marion Butts was, more likely than not, going to be named to the Pro Bowl. The AFC sent 5 running backs to the game, and while we all knew that Thurman Thomas was going to be one of them out of Buffalo, because of course he was due to how good his Bills were and how good he was as the league leader in yards from scrimmage, there weren't a whole lot of other options to snub out Butts. There were only 5 runners in the AFC as it was, with over 900 yards rushing. And seeing as the AFC sent 5 running backs, you're not leaving out the guy who's found the end zone and had more yards than just about all of them. Barring a massive snub that was highly unlikely to happen, Marion Butts, the man you've been watching this whole time, was going to make it to the Pro Bowl. So with Pro Bowl speculation running rampant, how did Butts respond to it? There are a lot of things that he could have said that would make this a complete non-story that is not worth remembering nearly 35 years later. If he said, "I'm honored of the consideration, but I'm not even worried about that right now. I'm trying to help this team make the playoffs," then this is a non-story. If he said, "If you're thinking about sending me to the Pro Bowl, you've got to send my offensive line, because they're the reason I'm even in this spot in the first place," then this is a non-story. If he said, "I'm just trying to take it one game at a time," then this is a non-story. You get the idea. There are a lot of things you can say as speculation is running by the end of the 1990 season that you're going to make the Pro Bowl. However, Butts decided to go in a completely different route, and he decided to say something so asinine and so idiotic that it needs to be seen to be believed. Because when asked about the Pro Bowl, he said that he didn't really feel like playing in the game, or didn't feel all that enthused about it. And it had nothing to do with family reasons, or wanting to just spend time relaxing in the off-season, or other obligations, or just needing a break from it all. Nope, it had nothing to do with that. Because according to Butts, the United States is okay by me. I don't need to travel through exotic places and see exotic things. Yep, you saw that right. Marion Butts wasn't looking forward to making the trip to the Pro Bowl because he wanted to stay in the United States. Which is a fair explanation, I guess, if the game was being held in Europe, or Asia, or Africa, or somewhere like that. But remind me again, where's the game being played? Oh yeah, freaking Hawaii! I'm sorry, what? In what world is Hawaii not a state? In what world is Hawaii an exotic location? The word exotic, by definition, means originating in or characteristic of a distant foreign country. Hawaii is, most definitely not a foreign country. Hawaii is one of the 50 states. I'm genuinely curious. Marion Butts knows that there are 50 states in the USA. He sees the 50 stars on the flag. He sees the flag waving before every game. What did he think the 50th state was if it wasn't Hawaii? Honestly, what did he think the 50th state was? Did he think a portion of the Dakotas got really ticked off with how the North was running it, so they created Central Dakota? Did he think the shape of Idaho looked weird, so the vertical part of the state broke away? Genuinely, I have to know. And it's not as though Butts was a foreign player who was unfamiliar with the country, because if that was the case, then that would be unfair to him to make this video. It would be like criticizing an American NFL player for not knowing how many states there are in Mexico. Like, I don't blame you if you don't know the answer to that one and have never lived in Mexico your whole life. But Marion Butts is American. He was born in Georgia. He went to high school in Georgia. He went to college at Northeast Oklahoma A&M and Florida State. He played for an NFL team in California. The man has lived in America his whole life and was born in 1966, well after Hawaii was granted statehood. You're telling me that you don't really want to play in the Pro Bowl, which by itself might seem insane, and you're using completely false logic to do so? That's like if someone wants to give me $5 and I say no, because I don't want to have to pay taxes on it. That's like if someone offers me tickets to a World Series game and I say no, because I'm not a fan of Japanese baseball. The logic is just insane. And it's not like there aren't guys on the Chargers who have never made the Pro Bowl before. It's not like you don't have teammates that haven't been invited to play in the game in the past. I'm sure they talked about it and told you how their experience was. And I'm dead confident that at no point during that conversation did they ever mention how difficult it was because no place took the American dollar, or how tough it was to acclimate there because no one spoke the language, or how they heard a different national anthem before the game that was not the Star-Spangled Banner. Or you had guys on the team that played in the Aloha Bowl during their college football days, and that was the same situation. How you, as a man who lived in the United States your whole life, did not think that Hawaii was a state and you didn't want to play in the Pro Bowl because you thought Hawaii was a foreign country is just mind-boggling to me. And you might be saying to yourself, okay, come on, maybe he meant the continental United States and you're just trying to twist his words into something else. Or maybe he was making a joke and it just didn't translate the best to print. However, you'd be giving him way too much credit if you genuinely think that, because reporters followed up with Butts on that statement, because they realized it sounded absolutely ridiculous. And not only was Butts adamant about the fact that Hawaii was an exotic, foreign location, but when someone asked him some of the most exciting places he's visited, since he didn't seem to want to go to Hawaii, he responded by saying, home, looking at television. I've got to have a television. Without a TV, you might not know what's going on. You might wake up, and it might be snowing. May I remind you, Marion Butts resided in freaking San Diego! When is the last time it snowed in San Diego? When's the last time anyone in San Diego looked outside and was like, oh crap, there's this white stuff coming down from the sky that I have no idea what it is? That's like saying I need to have a TV to be ready for any possible tsunamis when I live in Oklahoma. Newsflash, you're not getting any tsunamis in Oklahoma, much like you're not getting any snow in San Diego. And you don't need a TV to know whether it's snowing. You just have to look out your window. Did Marion Butts live in an underground bunker or something like that? I've got nothing. I've genuinely got nothing. This man was a shoo-in to make the Pro Bowl, and he was ready to throw it all away because he thought that Hawaii was a foreign country halfway around the world. And he might have been the most geographically inept person to ever play in the NFL, which is saying something, because Buster Rhymes of the Minnesota Vikings thought that the Minnesota Vikings played in Ohio, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. I can't explain it. I genuinely can't explain it. How do you pass college not knowing that Hawaii is a state? As for the man who played for this team behind me right here, Marion Butts would end up making it to the Pro Bowl during the 1990 season. Much to his dismay, I suppose. Marion Butts would then make the Pro Bowl a second time in 1991, meaning that he was a two-time Pro Bowler over his career. Hopefully, either in 1990 or 1991, when he realized that he didn't need to bring his passport and didn't need to go through customs at all to get into Hawaii, he realized that Hawaii was a part of the United States. Better late than never, I suppose. Marion Butts had a great career in the NFL, especially for a 7th-round pick. As a two-time Pro Bowler, he had over 5,000 yards rushing and was a fan favorite in San Diego. But as good as he was of a football player, he was that bad at knowing his geography. Seriously, Hawaii? Not a state? San Diego, it snows? Come on, man. Today, the Pro Bowl is not in Hawaii, and might not ever come back to Hawaii, considering their stadium situation. So no player will ever have to worry about that again. Today, if a player makes the Pro Bowl, they are doing so in one of the 50 states of the United States. Then again, they were doing that back in the day too, so Marion Butts wasn't exactly the sharpest tool in the shed. Note to anyone watching this video, Hawaii is a state. Hawaii is one of the states in the United States. It's a cool location, and it's beautiful, but it's one of the 50 states that make up this country of ours. If you don't think Hawaii is a state, and you think that the 50th state is something else, find a tutor immediately, or get a library card ASAP. Because in 1990, when Marion Butts thought he was saying aloha to the United States by making the Pro Bowl, Marion Butts became the butt of all jokes. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.